How did humans accidentally invent art and language together? You're sitting around a fire 50,000 years ago. There's no written language, there's no formal grammar, there's barely any spoken words that anyone would recognize today. And yet, someone picks up a stick, dips it in ash, and draws a shape on the cave wall. A hand. Your hand. Suddenly, you've done something that no other animal on Earth has ever done before. You've created a permanent record that you existed. You've made art, but here's the strange part. That same moment, 50,000 years ago, was also when human language exploded into complexity. Art and language didn't just appear around the same time in human history, they emerged together. They shaped each other, and neither one would have become what it is without the other. Most people think art came first, that humans learned to speak and then later, as a fun side project, decided to paint animals on rocks. But the timeline doesn't work that way, and the evidence doesn't match that story either. What actually happened was far more interesting. Art and language bootstrapped each other into existence through a process that nobody planned. It was an accident, and it changed everything. Let's go back to when humans didn't have art or complex language. 90,000 years ago, maybe 80,000. Your ancestors had words, they communicated. They had probably been communicating for hundreds of thousands of years before this moment, but those words were simple. They described immediate things: food, danger, here, now. There was no past tense. There was no way to describe something that wasn't currently in front of you. If you wanted to tell someone about a lion you saw yesterday, you couldn't really do it. You could point and mime. You could make sounds, but you couldn't package that idea into a neat little word and hand it across the group around the fire. Then something changed, and this is where it gets strange. Archaeological evidence suggests that around 50,000 years ago, humans started making marks deliberately, not as a side effect of some other activity, not accidentally, on purpose. The earliest examples we've found are simple: hand stencils, dots, lines, nothing that looks like what we'd call art in any modern sense. But the fact that they were made on purpose is revolutionary. Someone decided that making a mark was worth doing, that a mark meant something, it represented something, it communicated something to whoever looked at it later. Now, here's what most people miss about those hand stencils. They're not just decoration. They're not just someone being bored in a cave. Those hands are statements. They say, I was here, I existed, this is evidence of me. But to make that statement work, you need language. You need to understand that a symbol can represent something else, that a mark on a wall can mean a person, that meaning can be stored outside your body and outside your own memory. This is an insight that doesn't come naturally. It has to be learned, and the only way to learn it is through language. You have to talk about it. You have to agree on what the mark means. You have to teach someone else to interpret it the same way you do. So humans started making marks, and to make sense of those marks, they had to develop the language to talk about them. What does this hand mean? How do we name this concept? What do we call the idea of representing something with something else? Every cave painting required these conversations. Every mark on a wall pushed the boundaries of what language could do. Language had to become more abstract. It had to describe things that weren't present. It had to describe the idea of describing things. And as language became more complex, it made more ambitious art possible. But it goes the other way, too. Art pushed language forward. If you wanted to explain something complicated about a hunt, you could now draw it. You could show the sequence. You could indicate which direction the animal ran. You could use color to distinguish between details. Art gave language a new tool. It gave humans a way to communicate ideas that were too complex for words alone. And once that tool existed, language had to evolve to match it. You needed words for all the colors. You needed verbs for all the actions you were depicting. You needed the ability to discuss composition and perspective and intention. The breakthrough was understanding that symbols could be detached from their meaning, that a mark wasn't just a mark, it was a carrier. It could carry ideas from your mind into someone else's mind across time and space. This is the moment humans became fully human in the way we think about it now. Not because we got smarter suddenly, but because we figured out how to store thought outside our own heads. We could create a permanent record of what we were thinking. We could look at what someone else was thinking from 1,000 years ago. And once that happened, once humans understood that symbols could carry meaning, both art and language exploded. Suddenly, humans had tools that no other animal would ever develop. We could describe the future. We could tell stories about things that never happened. We could organize large groups of people around shared ideas that only existed in language and art. We could pass knowledge down to the next generation without having to experience every danger ourselves. We could say, "Don't go that way, there's a lion." We learned it from a mark someone made on a wall. The thing that's remarkable about this is how accidental it all was. Nobody set out to invent art and language together. Nobody had a meeting and decided, "Let's develop symbolic representation and abstract grammar." It happened because of a basic human drive to communicate and to be remembered. Someone wanted to say, "I was here," and that simple desire required inventing everything that made human civilization possible. Think about that for a moment. Every book ever written, every conversation you've had, every joke you've laughed at, every argument you've had about something that might happen in the future, all of that is downstream from the moment someone put their hand on a cave wall and realized that their hand could represent them, that a mark could carry meaning. That thought could be externalized and shared. Art and language didn't develop separately and then meet up later. They were always tangled together. You couldn't invent one without inventing the other. They were a single innovation, a single accident, and it's the accident that made us who we are.